Welcome back to the movie recap. Today's movie will be a 2018 American Christian drama film titled Indivisible. So sit back, relax and enjoy the video. The movie begins with the military government sending thousands of American soldiers from Fort Stewart to Baghdad, Iraq. They will help the Iraqis break the current cycle of violence and protect innocent citizens. Along with the American soldiers is Darren Turner. Unfortunately, he only finished the basic non-combat experience and is assigned to be a chaplain due to a military-wide shortage. Their departure will happen the day after tomorrow, so Darren spends his final moments with his family before heading to Iraq. Aside from Darren are other soldiers who also spend time with their families before being gone for 15 months. The following day, Darren and his wife, Heather, gather their neighbors in their backyard to have lunch before sending off their soldiers. One of their visitors is Tanya and Michael's family, whom Heather and Darren saw arguing outside their house the other day. While enjoying the small gathering, Darren suddenly approaches Michael and gives him a drink. But Michael refuses and warns Darren to stay away from his family and mind his business. Departure day finally comes. Heather and her children hug Darren before letting him enter the shuttle bus. But Eli suddenly runs toward Darren, gives him a last hug, and wishes him to be safe on the mission. Eli also shows worriedness on her face, so Darren gives her a military token as a memory of him to make Eli secure whenever she's scared. Eventually, the military soldiers arrive at Forward Operating Base Falcon in Iraq. Darren goes directly to the facility and meets Lieutenant Jacobson and Major North. Meanwhile, Heather joins the family readiness group in their neighborhood to keep her connected with Darren during deployment. She also befriends Michael's wife, Tanya, who eventually shares her relationship with Michael, who becomes angry and distant after returning from a mission. Due to that, Tanya favors Heather to request Darren to look after Michael. At the base, Major North tours Darren on their facilities and introduces Sergeant Shonda Peterson as Darren's assistant. On Darren's first night on the base, he immediately contacts his family and talks to Heather. They discuss their plan to post pictures on the website regularly so that they can look for one another. Darren is supposed to talk with Heather but needs to hang up. The following day, Darren starts his first routine before setting off for work, taking pictures and posting them to the website. Afterward, he prays for his soldiers before sending them off for a mission. After the first patrol mission, Darren decides to play basketball when suddenly Michael approaches him. Michael then warns Darren not to intervene with their family problem because he discovers that Darren agrees to Tanya's favor to look out for Michael. However, Darren refuses to compromise and make a deal with Michael. Darren orders Michael to contact his family, and if Michael's call is answered, Darren will continue helping them fix their family relationship. But if not, Darren will stop. However, it turns out that Tanya answers Michael's call, indicating that Darren will remain helping them. The following day, Heather meets Bradley's wife, Amanda, while taking photographs. On the other hand, Darren receives a report that 3 soldiers from the assigned platoon to patrol are killed. He also discovers that along with the soldiers passing is the death of an innocent child. Darren then takes the child's body from Lance Bradley, who reasons they failed to save the child. Upon protecting the severely injured soldiers and innocent citizens, Darren unconsciously builds anxiety from the situation. Later at night, Lieutenant Jacobson orders Darren to share his words with the platoon to comfort them. So, Darren visits the affected soldiers in their tent and shares the words of God. However, Bradley refuses to believe and have faith in God, saying that the heavens above failed to save his comrades. After discussing with the platoon, Darren makes a video for his family, apologizing for not updating them about what is going on with him on the military base. The following day, Bradley visits Darren in his chaplain's tent. He apologizes for his misbehavior last night, which Darren forgives. Afterward, they introduce their family to each other. Finally, Darren gives Bradley a Bible, telling him to try connecting with God. After talking with Bradley, Darren immediately contacts Heather. He favors her making Christmas stockings for the soldiers with gifts and snacks for the upcoming Christmas. Darren also says he needs thousands of them, so Heather plans to ask for help for the soldiers' wives. As they talk, Heather opens up about their son's achievement he posted on the website, but Darren forgets about it. Due to that, Heather becomes worried and asks about Darren's condition. Darren answers, saying he is fine but also struggling to keep working at the military base. Another morning comes, and Michael thanks Darren for what he and Heather did to help them fix their relationship. Michael informs Darren that he and Tanya are talking again. Afterward, Darren and Michael prepare to move out as they will visit the other base. At Buka camp, a mortar attack happens while Darren and his comrades are visiting. They are eventually pinned down, which causes them to go to the bunker immediately. Once they enter the bunker to hide, Darren suddenly shivers due to the awful experience. Meanwhile, Heather and her children pray for Darren's safety, especially Eli, who who specifies her prayer about wishing for his father's safety. The following day, Heather and Tanya begin packing the soldiers. At the same time, Heather talks about getting curious about Eli's specified prayer last night. So, Tanya tells her that Eli might sense something because she received news about the mortar attack in Iraq, where their husbands are visiting their comrade bases. But Tanya also ensures they are in good condition, so Heather should not worry much. However, Heather still worries because Darren didn't tell her about it. But aside from that, Heather also shares with Tanya that she feels something more is happening with her relationship with Darren that she can't figure out. Tanya clarifies that it's between them and the war, not their relationship. Then, Heather notices Amanda's arrival. So, she approaches Amanda and introduces her to Tanya. At the camp, Darren is looking at her children's photos when suddenly he remembers the death of an innocent child brought to their base. Suddenly, Shonda enters the tent, seeing Darren looking at the pictures. Due to that, Darren entertains Shonda and gives her a book for her son. Darren then gives the remote recorder to Shonda so she can send a video to her son. Once Darren gets out of the tent, Shonda opens the video recorder and starts recording herself. She tells her son she misses him and begins reading a story to her son using the book. Later at night, Darren contacts Heather, telling her about not seeing photos of her children on the website. Darren also shares about receiving another report of the deaths of 3 soldiers. However, their talk suddenly cuts off as Heather is busy cooking their dinner. In the meeting base, Darren receives a new mission they will transport as former Sunni insurgents want to engage in war against Al-Qaeda. The following day, Darren and the rest of the soldiers prepare to head off. But before that, Darren approaches Bradley first and gives him a snack. Bradley thanks him and eventually shares that he starts bringing the Bible given by Darren when he is on a mission. Due to that, Darren decides to provide him with a military token, which Bradley accepts. Tanya, Heather, and their children go to the fall festival. Eli suddenly gets lost in the maze and gets an asthma attack. Heather then receives what happened to Eli and immediately enters the maze. On the other hand, Darren and his comrades finally arrive at the market to look for the 12 Pax bus and get the civilian forces on training in patrol base Hawks. However, a Sunni insurgent informs his clan that the military troops have arrived at the market. Darren and his comrades aren't aware of the sudden mortar attack. Still, they safely escape the area as the Sunni insurgents fail to kill them. However, they fail to get the civilians as they turn insurgents. Darren and his comrades finally arrive at patrol base Hawks. Then, Darren eventually receives a call from Heather, where he finds out that Eli got an asthma attack, and Heather worries about her. So, Darren starts comforting her but becomes aggressive after Heather complains that she's struggling to take care of their children alone. Darren and Heather's conversation suddenly ends as Darren cuts off the call immediately. Christmas comes, and the military soldiers make a simple celebration and give gifts to their families. After that, Darren shares the words of God with the soldiers, baptizes them, and prays for their safety before heading off to their mission. Darren also gives Michael a military token, which Michael eventually accepts. Later at night, Shonda visits Darren to give thanks for his help in fixing her relationship with her son. Darren feels happy because of it, and with that, he provides Shonda with a military token. The following day, Darren suddenly receives a report that Bradley got killed during their operation yesterday. He also discovers that Michael is in critical condition after trying to save Bradley from the explosion. Despite feeling down about what happened to his friends, Darren takes his courage to give a funeral Bible verses for Bradley and a eulogy. He also lifts the spirit of his newly trained soldiers to finish their mission so they can go home safely. Darren finally returns home and reunites with his family after 15 months. Afterward, Darren and his family return to their house for dinner. However, Darren suddenly feels off as he thinks about Michael's family. Heather notices Darren looking at Michael's family house, so she informs him that Tanya and her children have left to be with Michael at Walter Reed. But then, Darren seems preoccupied with thinking about his military experience with Michael and ignores Heather. Later at night, Heather finds out that Darren is sleeping on the couch, so she approaches Darren and comforts him. When the morning comes, Heather contacts Tanya to ask about their situation. So, Tanya answers but suddenly hangs up their call when she sees Michael awakens. Eventually, Michael reconciles with Tanya and his children. Meanwhile, Shonda is now responsible for being a mother to her son and delivering him to school. On the other hand, Heather notices Darren's unusual behavior due to the traumatic event at their military mission. Unfortunately, it causes him to be stupefied most of the time and become distant. Due to that, Heather has left no choice but to feel stressed and sad about Darren's situation. The following day, Darren takes himself for a jog to breathe fresh air. But it takes him the whole day before he gets home, and he misses their dinner. Due to that, Heather forms an argument with Darren and begs him to open up about his feelings so she can help him. However, Darren is too angry to understand what Heather is saying and storms off. Darren also shows anger toward his children, causing Heather to kick him out of their house. Darren has no choice but to rent an apartment for a while. He also talks to Chaplain Rogers to let him figure out what is happening to him. But, unfortunately, Chaplain Rogers discovers that Darren is starting to lose faith in God after his friends die and suffer severe injuries. Afterward, Darren decides to apply as a gardener, hoping it could help him lessen his attacks from the trauma. Meanwhile, Tanya and Amanda visit Heather to comfort her. Tanya assures Heather with her words, saying to continue having faith in God because their family will heal in no time. The following day, Heather and Darren visit Chaplain Rogers, where they realize from him that they lost faith in God because of their dire situations. Due to that, Chaplain Rogers recommends Darren and Heather have a fresh start and reconnect with God. With the help of Chaplain Rogers' examination of their problem, Heather realizes that Darren has post-traumatic stress disorder. So, Heather assures Darren that she can help him and begs him not to keep his distance from his family. Darren eventually reconciles with Heather, but he's not ready yet to return home. So, Heather lets Darren take his time and waits for his return once he is healed. At the floral garden, Darren continues working when suddenly Michael visits him. Michael is curious about what happened to Darren, and he asks him the cause of his anger. But Darren refuses to answer, so Michael reminds Darren that he is the reason why they believe in God and accept their fate during the mission. Michael's words eventually help Darren to realize everything. Apparently, Darren learns that he is now in Michael's position before, when Michael got post-traumatic stress disorder, and became distant from his family after returning home from the mission. So, to return the favor for what Darren did to him, Michael helps Darren recover and fix his family's relationship. Fortunately, Darren isn't a stern listener and follows Michael's order to return home and talk with his family after he heals himself. Darren spends his day working out with Michael. They do exercise and sports while Heather continues her session with Chaplain Rogers. Heather and Darren once attended Eli's career day to share their good memories as workers with the students. Darren also gives Heather a special message and flowers. Later at night, Heather finally realizes that she and Darren are hurting. So, Heather finally repents to God and starts building on her faith again. Meanwhile, Darren finishes creating a wood camp for his children and discreetly delivers it to their garden. The following day, Eli and Sam discover the wood camp in their garden. They immediately call Heather to look at it, and Heather realizes that Darren did it. Due to that, Heather favors her children to help her make a bouquet and deliver it to Darren. Aside from that, Heather also asks the garden owner to tell Darren to come to the Freedom Park gazebo later at night. Finally, Darren reunites with his family after taking time off to heal himself. Darren's faith in God also returns as he and Heather shares their good memories and starts building a new one. 1 year later, Darren is visited by Chaplain Rogers, where he receives an excellent promotion to Captain of Special Forces. However, Darren refuses it and decides to spend years being a father to his family. The movie ends with Heather assuring Darren that they will be prepared for any challenges they take and convinces Darren to accept the offer. Due to that, Darren takes his oath and is promoted to the new Captain of Special Forces. Darren also discovers that Michael has fully recovered from his leg injury and is promoted to captain like him. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this to help the channel out. Have a nice day.